Hey, it's Mike Brennan, and we're back with another edition of MITech TV. And it's like old friends a week here. We got Pavan Mazumdar, the Chief Operating Officer at Automation Alley, an organization that I have been covering or working with or whatever, I don't know, since 1999. That sounds like I want to party like it's 1999, but I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. Ken Rogers dragged me into it when I broke away from the Free Press and started MITech News, and love Ken, good guy, and we still miss him. But let's talk about some of the new things you guys are doing. And we were chit-chatting before we started here a little bit, and it's called Project DIAMOnD. It's Oakland County's initiative powered by Automation Alley. And let's talk a little bit about what that does. We were talking about it before we started, and I thought that was a good discussion. So take it away, Pavan.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. And it's just a pleasure to be on the show. So Project DIAMOnD actually stands for Distributed Independent Agile Manufacturing on Demand. And it's actually the result of our philosophy. As you know, Mike, we've been the Industry 4.0 Knowledge Center for the state of Michigan for several years now in our second kind of version of Automation Alley. And as we kind of went down this Industry 4.0 path, we saw that manufacturing was becoming more and more software driven. And in that software driven philosophy, it is additive manufacturing or technologies like additive manufacturing that are sort of leading the charge. And then if you put those two together, that has the promise of manufacturing becoming distributed. So those are sort of the three drivers, and Project DIAMOnD came out of that. It was actually an initiative funded by Oakland County in the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic. And Oakland County came to us and they said, we're having trouble sourcing PPE, personal protective equipment. What can you do that's kind of interesting? And that's how this project was born. And what we said was that small manufacturers do not invest in, technologies that are under a platform shift. So additive manufacturing has a lot of promise, but it's still not reached the potential of scaled manufacturing. But it's something that we believe very deeply that manufacturers need to pay attention to. And so we said, listen, small manufacturers aren't going to buy additive equipment. So we need to do something that's like a forcing function. And that's what Project DIAMOnD was. We distributed 300 3D printers in Oakland and Macomb counties. And the idea was you get to be an essential business within the county. You can use this printer to do whatever it is that you want to do. You can create products, you can make jigs, fixtures, whatever you want to do in your own organization. But if called upon, we'll use your printer to produce PPE. And we don't know what the PPE is. It could be a face shield, it could be a ventilator part. So 3D printer is this flexible manufacturing. It can make a lot of different things. And that was a simple premise. So we didn't have to use the network for the pandemic, but we ended up actually validating it by producing tourniquet components for the Ukraine war effort in 2022. And that was phase two. And then, phase one. And then phase two was funded in 2023. And that was a continuation of Project DIAMOnD and sort of became we crafted the program to build up on our knowledge and our learnings from phase one. And so that's sort of a brief history of what Project DIAMOnD is.
That's a really interesting application. Did anybody see that as part of the potential outcome when the project started?
That as in the printing of the tourniquets?
Yeah.
No, and that's Terry, that is actually the power of this network, is that we were able to get this request, and it came out of the western side of the state. There was a request from the Ukraine Ministry of Defense saying that, hey, they need this humanitarian, need on the battlefield, and they were struggling to get these tourniquet clips. The traditional manufacturing wasn't able to be ready in time because the molds weren't being prepared in time, and they were running, this was causing problems. So they said, hey, can you do something? And we said, you have a design that you can 3D print, and very quickly the CAD models came together, and within a week and a half, we shipped over 10,000 components to Denmark. And this is the power of being able to very quickly respond to a need. And by the way, when we went down this path, we didn't know that we could do this. So we said, hey, this is something we got to try because the outcome could be potentially huge. And that's what it was. And that is, and by the way, that is where manufacturing is going. Manufacturing is changing at the speed of software. We might have heard this before, right? That software grows exponentially. There's Moore's law, there's the exponentiality of growth. And that's one of those things that we want our manufacturing base to understand. The last 50, 100 years, manufacturing was changing incrementally because it's we know it. Manufacturing is a hard discipline. It's not easy. And so changes take time, but when you start pushing in digital technology, those changes start coming at quantum speed, right? And that's one of those things and we kind of lived it through this project.
That's awesome. And it's such a great story for entrepreneurship, for the digital age, for how things need to happen. And oh, by the way, we're not sure if it's going to work. Let's try it. And holy cow, a week and a half later, here's 10,000 shipped product.
Yes.
Great stuff. So I understand that there's a digital transformation center that's open up in Auburn Hills. Can you talk a little bit about the DTC? Because we need another technical language acronym, TLA for you.
Tell me about it. So as I mentioned, in phase one, we learned a lot about how manufacturers respond to advanced technology. And we kind of had a little bit of a, characterized like a bell curve response. We had about 10 to 20% of these companies, they got their 3D printer and the wheels of innovation pretty much just started spinning rapidly. And these companies, some of them designed products that they were ready to sell. Some of them designed, components for internal use. Some of them kind of iterated through multiple SKUs. So we had a lot of great stories coming out of these examples. But then we had sort of this group in the middle that were still sort of struggling with their day-to-day business and figuring out, how do I assimilate this technology? Because, again, it's resource issues, it's bandwidth issues, things like that. And so in phase two, what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a mechanism by which the response and the experience would be more uniform. And that's where we conceived of a digital transformation center. So the printers that we distribute are production quality, but they're smaller printers. The DTC is a captive location where we have higher volume, more expensive equipment, and it's also where we actually bring in these companies to help them through the digital transformation program. There's another acronym for you, the DTP. And what we learned was you can't just give technology to a company. You actually have to empower them, not just on the technology, but also on what does this mean for the business? How do I create a transformed business? What does my P&L look like? What does my balance sheet look like when I transform my business using these advanced technologies? So the digital transformation program is actually this 10-week kind of deep dive into what is additive, how do I find opportunities, how do I redesign and reconceive products using additive, and then how do I build a business on additive? And they do that at the DTC. And the DTC is where we have this equipment where they can prototype in different materials. So in the first phase of Project Diamond, we single source the printers from our partners at Markforged. In the second phase, we're having now two types of printers that we're distributing, but the DTC expands the scope of the printing capability. We're adding some metals. We're also adding some 3D scanning capabilities. It's essentially sort of your introduction to how do I create an end-to-end value chain in my organization to completely digitalize the product conception to creation. And that's what the DTC is all about. That's what we call the Digital Transformation Center, where you can actually come in and reconceive your business and your products using additive.
So what's different about the equipment available at the DTC compared to the 3D printers that are issued as part of Project Diamond?
Great question. So fundamentally, a 3D printer is a 3D printer. In other words, the foundational technology is very similar. But I look at it as, what's the difference between a laptop and what's the difference between that and a supercomputer in a data center, right? So the laptop has your ability you can create your your software, your programs, and things like that. But if you want to scale it up in terms of getting access to, thousands or millions of users, you need to port that into a data center. And the DTC is a similar concept. So we have higher volume equipment. We have equipment from Stratasys that can produce higher volume production parts. We have a metal printer. We have some scanning equipment. So we have the ability for someone to come in and say, I've got an idea, and how do I now kind of take that from conception to manifestation? And that's what the DTC enables us to do.
That's awesome. So along those lines, if I have an idea, can I come in? If Mike has an idea, can he come in? What companies are eligible to use the center?
Awesome question. So today, Project Diamond is funded by Oakland County through its deployment of.
Sorry, Mike, wrong county, bud.
So, but we are working very hard to make this a statewide initiative, because honestly, innovation shouldn't stop at the border of a county. But today, phase 2, if you're in Oakland County, projectdiamond.org, that's the site you need to go to and apply. And Terry, you mentioned something that I want to kind of dig into a little bit more. When we look at manufacturing is a hard discipline to get into. It's not easy because there's capital requirements, there's process knowledge, things like that. With additive, some of those foundational constraints go away. And so, as you said, if I have an idea and if I have the ability to design and conceive my idea in 3D, Project Diamond can help you jump over that hurdle and become a manufacturer. And that's why we're opening up Project Diamond to other companies. Like, say, if you're a technology company and you have the ability, you're native digitally, digital technology doesn't scare you, CAD doesn't scare you, 2D and 3D design doesn't scare you, become part of Project Diamond, because all that production stuff, all the hard stuff, that's going to be taken care of by the 3D printer. So if you're an engineering house, and we have a lot of, design competency in this area. If you're a company that has strong design competencies, you can apply. Say you're an engineering firm, or you don't see yourself as a manufacturer, you can come in. And the nice thing about Project Diamond Phase 2 is we're in the process of building a marketplace where you can monetize your own IP. So this is where manufacturing is going. And so it opens up the thing, not just for traditional manufacturers, but anybody who can think of themselves as, I have an idea that I'd like to kind of manifest into reality using a 3D printer. You become a great candidate for Project Diamond. And the way we like to say it, even if you're outside of Oakland County, get in touch, because you'll get into our list, you'll get into our waiting list. And then as soon as it's available in your area, we'll make sure that we get in touch with you and, get you into the program.